In the bustling city of Lagos there lived 4 wealthy naughty friends who often gathered to have a drink and share stories. These friends, Leo, James, Lucas and Toby, were known for their wild games and silly dares. They were young, rich, and always in search of fun, which often involved outrageous bets they dared each other to complete. On one warm evening they were lounging at their favorite bar, a lively place right across the street from a busy bakery. People walked in and out of the bakery, buying freshly baked bread, while the friends laughed and talked about their recent bets. Toby, the silliest of them all, was still proud of how he had won the last challenge. Leo had dared him to flirt and sleep with a serious no-nonsense secretary from Toby's church. Toby eventually won the secretary over and slept with her. The boys laughed over this memory, with Toby shaking his head, already plotting his revenge. As they sipped their drinks, Toby's eyes wandered across the street and landed on a woman who looked nothing like the girls they usually noticed. She was standing behind a counter, wearing a simple worn apron, carefully handing a loaf of bread to a customer. She looked round and plump, her face soft with a kind smile, but her clothes were plain, and she didn't have the polished look of someone who moved in their circles. This was Sarah, a modest baker, who had no idea that she was being watched by 4 mischievous eyes across the street. Toby smirked and nudged Leo, pointing in Sarah's direction. "See that woman over there? I bet you won't be able to win her over. Marry her for 6 months, and I'll pay for your entire wedding, honeymoon, and all your travel expenses for 2 years. What do you say?" James and Lucas burst out laughing. James leaned in and said, "This is too far, Toby. Leo can't do this one. She's nothing like the women he's used to." But Leo was the kind of person who never backed down from a challenge. Mischief sparked in his eyes as he studied Sarah from afar. She was definitely different from anyone he'd dated. Simple, plumped, grounded, and perhaps even shy. Something about the challenge stirred his curiosity. Without another word, he got up from his seat, left his drink behind, and walked across the street towards the bakery. Inside the bakery, the warm smell of fresh bread filled the air. Sarah was busy serving customers when Leo walked in. His expensive clothes and confident air caught her attention, but she quickly looked away, not thinking too much of it. Leo cleared his throat as he approached the counter, giving her his best charming smile. "Hello there," he greeted smoothly. "Can I have a loaf of bread, please?" Sarah looked at him, her eyes narrowing in slight suspicion, though she was polite. "Sure," she said, handing him the loaf. Leo tried to make small talk, asking her name and telling her how he'd never tasted bread as fresh as hers. But Sarah kept her responses short and focused on her work. Unlike other women who would have been drawn to his charm and flashy clothes, she was unimpressed. This only made Leo more intrigued. Leo left the bakery that evening with her contact number, but he knew he had his work cut out for him. Sarah was unlike any woman he'd met. She wasn't swayed by his wealth or his confident smile, and that made the challenge even more exciting. Over the next few days, Leo kept calling Sarah, arranging for dates and taking her out to fancy places. He showered her with gifts, bought her new clothes, and even took her to high-end restaurants. But Sarah was cautious. She had always worked hard for everything she had and was skeptical of people who tried to woo her with wealth. In her experience, people like Leo came and went quickly, never serious and never interested in the simple things that she held dear. When Leo took her to a fancy dinner, she looked around at the crystal glasses and golden decorations with a small, nervous smile. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate nice things, but she felt like she didn't quite belong. She noticed Leo's wandering eyes every time a woman passed their table, and even began to wonder if he was serious about her. Her cautious heart warned her to pull back before she got too attached to him. One evening, after a luxurious dinner, Leo noticed that Sarah was growing quieter. She seemed uneasy, her thoughts distant, and her responses short. As they parted ways, she gently told him that she needed some time to think. Leo, who was always used to women fawning over him, was taken aback. For the first time, he felt a pang of fear that Sarah might slip away before he'd even had a chance to know her better. James, Lucas, and Toby laughed when they heard that Sarah had not fallen for Leo's charm as easily as they'd expected. Toby, in particular, was thrilled, thinking that his challenge was impossible for Leo to complete. Leo, however, was far from defeated. He wasn't sure if he had begun to care for Sarah or if his stubborn pride was simply pushing him to win the bet. But either way, he knew he wouldn't give up. That night, Leo lay awake, thinking of Sarah's quiet smile and the way her eyes softened when she spoke about her life. Leo wasn't used to feeling uncertain. He was always the confident one, the man who made decisions easily and got what he wanted without effort. But Sarah had changed everything. She had become a puzzle he was eager to solve, a quiet song that played softly in his mind even when he wasn't around her. He found himself drawn to her sincerity, her kindness, and the way she made him feel like he could be more than just another rich man in the city. Determined to win her over, Leo started putting more thought into their time together. He began taking her on simpler outings instead of the fancy dates he was accustomed to. He'd invite her for a stroll in the city park, where they'd talk for hours under the shade of trees, watching children play and people passing by. He took her to small local food joints where they ate spicy jollof rice and suya, laughing over the intense flavors. Leo began to notice that when Sarah laughed, her eyes sparkled in a way that made him feel truly happy, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Despite his growing fondness for her, Leo couldn't shake off his friends' taunts. Toby, James, and Lucas were relentless. "So, how's your queen doing?" Toby would mock, pretending to hold a crown above his head. The poor baker must be thrilled to be getting so much attention. At first, Leo would laugh it off, brushing aside their jokes. But as his feelings for Sarah grew, their jokes began to sting. Every time he met with his friends, he could feel a pang of guilt in his heart. He had started this relationship as a game, a careless bet that seemed funny at the time. But now, he was beginning to care for Sarah in ways he had never expected. One evening, Leo visited Sarah's small bakery to surprise her. He stood at the door for a moment, watching her move around behind the counter, her face glowing as she worked. She looked different here, confident and completely at ease in her world. As he approached, Sarah looked up and smiled warmly. "Leo, you're here early today," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Let me finish up with a customer and then we can talk." He nodded and waited, watching her interact with the people who came to buy her bread. It struck him how much people adored her. Customers greeted her with kind words and friendly smiles. She was respected in this little community, loved for her kindness and generosity. Watching her, Leo felt a deep sense of admiration. When she finished, they sat together on a small bench outside her shop, enjoying the cool evening breeze. Sarah looked over at him, her eyes full of quiet wonder. "Why are you doing all this, Leo?" she asked softly. "You don't seem like someone who would find joy in a simple life." The question hit him hard. He wasn't sure how to answer, but he didn't want to lie to her. "At first, I wasn't sure myself," he admitted. "I'm used to a different lifestyle, but something about you makes me feel calmer, happier even." "I didn't expect it, Sarah." She looked at him thoughtfully, as if trying to understand what he was saying. "Life isn't all about fancy things, you know," she said with a gentle smile. "Sometimes the simplest moments are the most beautiful." Leo nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. There was a time when he thought success and happiness were about wealth, status, and power. But here he was, sitting with Sarah on a wooden bench outside a humble bakery, feeling more fulfilled than he ever had in his lavish, upscale life. However, his heart was not completely at peace. He was falling for Sarah, but the shadow of the bet still hung over him. It was a secret that he dreaded would someday come to light. If Sarah found out, he knew he'd lose her, and the thought of that scared him. One Saturday, he decided to introduce Sarah to his family. He hadn't told his friends about it because he knew they'd just make fun of him. His parents, however, were more open-minded, and he hoped they would see Sarah the way he did. As they entered his parents' grand home, Sarah's eyes widened at the luxurious decor, the high ceilings and the glittering chandeliers. She looked shy and out of place, but Leo held her hand reassuringly. His parents welcomed Sarah warmly, immediately sensing the kindness in her. Leo's mother, a sharp, business-minded woman, saw through people quickly. She studied Sarah with interest as they spoke, noticing how she was genuine and unaffected by the wealth around her. Sarah shared some clever ideas she had for her bakery, and Leo's mother listened intently, nodding in approval. By the end of the evening, Leo's parents were smitten. "She's a lovely girl," his mother told him quietly as Sarah helped in the kitchen, chatting with the house staff. "She's grounded, hardworking, a rare gem, Leo. Don't let her go." Hearing this filled Leo with joy and a sense of relief. His parents could see what he saw in Sarah, and their approval meant everything to him. But he still felt uneasy because he knew he wasn't being completely honest with her. The guilt gnawed at him, eating away at the happiness he felt whenever he was with her. Their relationship grew closer with each passing day, and soon Leo began to forget about the bet altogether. He spent his days looking forward to the next time he would see Sarah, and every moment he spent with her felt like a gift. She had changed him in so many ways, making him appreciate the simpler, more meaningful things in life. He found himself thinking less about his friends' opinions and more about what truly made him happy. Yet his friends refused to let the bet go. One day, Toby pulled him aside after a group outing, grinning slyly. "So, lover boy, how's the game going?" he asked, winking. "Remember, 6 months and you'll get a paid vacation for 2 years. Not bad." Leo felt a rush of anger and shame, but he forced himself to stay calm. "It's not a game, Toby," he replied quietly. "She's a real person and I care about her." Toby laughed, brushing off Leo's seriousness. "Don't tell me you're actually falling for her. She's nice, sure, but you know she's not in our league. This was just a dare, remember?" Leo clenched his fists, feeling torn. Part of him wanted to punch Toby for his careless words, but another part reminded him that he was the one who'd accepted the bet in the first place. It had all started as a game, a thoughtless challenge, but now it felt like so much more. He knew he had to make a decision soon. Either he would come clean to Sarah and risk losing her, or he would continue living this lie, pretending that his love had no shadows. Back home that night, Leo lay awake, wrestling with his emotions. The thought of losing Sarah made his chest ache, but the shame of keeping such a terrible secret made him feel even worse. He knew he had to find a way to set things right, even if it meant risking everything. Little did he know, the moment of truth would come sooner than he expected, and it would change everything between him and Sarah forever. One Saturday afternoon, as they were preparing lunch together in Sarah's small, cozy kitchen, she noticed his distracted expression. "Is everything okay, Leo?" she asked, looking at him with concern in her warm brown eyes. Leo hesitated, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," he replied, hoping she wouldn't probe further. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You know, you can talk to me. Whatever it is, I'm here to listen." The sincerity in her voice nearly broke him. He opened his mouth to speak, to let the words out, but his courage faltered. "I know, Sarah," he replied softly. "Thank you." Despite his lingering guilt, Leo cherished every moment with her. Their connection continued to deepen, and he began to dream of a future with her, a life untainted by lies and secrets. However, his friends were becoming more persistent. They found Leo's transformation from carefree bachelor to loyal partner amusing, and Toby, in particular, enjoyed taunting him about the upcoming 6-month mark. One evening, they all gathered for a small party at Lucas's house. Leo had tried to avoid it, not wanting to hear the usual jokes and jabs about Sarah, but his friends had insisted. They teased him mercilessly, joking about how he'd gone soft and calling him Romeo. "So, Leo," Toby grinned as he poured himself a drink. "Only a couple of weeks left till your big win. 2 years of vacations, remember?" Leo shot him a cold look. "Drop it, Toby." "Why?" "You were fine with it in the beginning," Toby replied, smirking. "Don't tell me you've actually fallen for her." The others laughed, but Leo's silence gave them pause. For the first time, Toby's smug grin faltered. He looked at Leo, frowning. Wait, are you serious? Listen, Toby, Leo said, his voice low and controlled. Sarah's a good person. She's changed my life in ways you wouldn't understand. This isn't just a game anymore. Toby snorted. You're kidding, right? She's just a baker, Leo. She's not our type, his words trailed off, but the disgust was clear in his tone. Lucas and James exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the tension growing between them. Leo clenched his fists, struggling to hold back his anger. She's more than enough for me, he replied through gritted teeth. Toby scoffed, but before he could retort, Lucas cut in, trying to calm the situation. Come on guys, let's not make this a big deal. We're here to have fun, right? The conversation turned to other topics, but Leo couldn't shake the frustration building within him. His friend's dismissive attitude toward Sarah hurt him deeply, and he hated the fact that he was partly to blame. If he had never accepted the bet, none of this would have happened. After the party, Leo returned to Sarah's apartment, feeling drained and unsettled. She greeted him with a warm smile, but he could barely meet her gaze, the weight of his secret crushing him. Leo, are you okay? She asked, sensing his unease. He forced a smile, trying to shake off his dark mood. Just tired, he murmured, wrapping his arms around her. But as he held her close, he knew he couldn't keep lying to her. She deserved the truth, even if it meant losing her. The next day, Leo sat alone in his apartment, rehearsing what he would say to Sarah. Just as he was gathering his courage to finally tell her, his phone buzzed. It was Toby, inviting him and the others to a gathering at his house that evening. Leo hesitated, but Toby insisted, saying it was important. Reluctantly, Leo agreed, deciding that he would tell Sarah everything after the gathering. Little did he know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would force his secret out sooner than he anticipated. That evening, Leo and Sarah arrived at Toby's house, where the usual crowd was gathered by the pool, laughing and enjoying themselves. His friends had brought their girlfriends along, all dressed in flashy outfits, and they greeted him with sly smiles and knowing glances. But Leo was in no mood for jokes. The night went smoothly until, once again, Toby brought up the bet. So, Leo, our 6-month mark is just around the corner, he said with a smirk. Have you made any plans yet? Leo felt his temper rising. I told you to drop it, Toby. Oh, come on, Toby chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. You're not seriously in love with her, are you? She's just a... Before he could finish, Leo snapped. Enough, Toby, he shouted, startling everyone around them. Sarah is more than you'll ever be. I don't care about your stupid bet anymore. I'm done with this. The room fell silent, and Toby looked taken aback, but a flicker of anger flashed in his eyes. Are you saying you're backing out? He sneered. Or have you forgotten how this all started? You agreed to marry her for a bet. Don't act like you're any better than the rest of us. The words hit Leo like a punch to the gut, and his anger flared again. Before he could respond, he heard a small gasp behind him. He turned, his heart sinking as he saw Sarah standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. Sarah, Leo stammered, reaching out to her, but she took a step back, her eyes filling with hurt. So, it was all just a game, she whispered, her voice trembling. You married me because of a bet. Leo felt his heart break as he saw the pain in her expression. Sarah, please let me explain. It started as a bet, yes, but I swear it's not like that anymore. I love you. Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to me, Leo? I trusted you. Without another word, she turned and ran out of the house. Leo chased after her, but by the time he reached the street, she was gone. He felt a crushing sense of guilt and regret, realizing that his worst fear had come true. He had lost her because of his foolish pride and his need to prove something to his friends. Back inside, Toby, Lucas, and James stood in awkward silence, watching Leo's devastated expression. For once, even Toby looked remorseful. Leo, I didn't mean for it to go this far, he mumbled, but Leo couldn't bear to look at any of them. You've ruined everything, he muttered, his voice choked with anger and pain. "I never want to see any of you again." With that, Leo stormed out of the house, determined to find a way to make things right. But as he walked through the dark, empty streets, he realized that winning Sarah back would be the hardest challenge he had ever faced. He had broken her heart, and he wasn't sure if she would ever forgive him. The days that followed were a haze of regret and desperation for Leo. Every call and message he sent to Sarah went unanswered, and he was consumed by the weight of his actions. He replayed the last few months over and over in his mind, realizing just how deeply he had betrayed the trust of the one person who truly mattered to him. Leo threw himself into trying to make amends. He reached out to Sarah's close friends and family, hoping they could help him find a way to speak with her, but their responses were cold and distant. Her friends, who had grown fond of Leo, were now disgusted, and her family had closed ranks, refusing to let him near her. Sarah was hurt and angry, and he couldn't blame her. One evening, Leo went to Sarah's bakery, hoping she might be there. He stood outside, watching as customers filtered in and out. He remembered how Sarah had dreamed of this bakery her whole life, how her eyes lit up whenever she spoke of it, and how she poured her heart into every pastry and loaf of bread. She was more than he deserved, and he knew it. After waiting for hours, Leo finally saw her step out to close up. She looked exhausted, her usually bright expression dimmed, and she barely acknowledged him as she walked past. Gathering his courage, he called out to her. "Sarah, please," he said, his voice trembling. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah stopped, but she didn't turn around. "You broke my heart, Leo," she replied quietly. "I don't think I can ever trust you again." Her words were like knives, cutting deep, but Leo knew he couldn't give up. "I know I made the biggest mistake of my life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I don't expect you to forgive me, but please believe me when I say that I love you. The bet was a horrible, stupid thing, but it stopped being a game for me a long time ago." Sarah finally turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "So what do you want from me, Leo? Second chance? How can I ever believe that you're not just pretending?" "I don't expect you to believe me," he admitted, swallowing hard. "But I'll do anything to prove myself to you. I'll wait as long as it takes. I just want you to be happy, even if that means without me." Sarah shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore, Leo. I was happy. I trusted you, and you turned it into a lie." Her words hung in the air, a painful reminder of everything he had thrown away. She walked away, leaving him standing alone under the dim streetlights, feeling more lost than he ever had before. Over the following months, Leo tried to move forward, but he couldn't shake his remorse. He threw himself into his work, hoping to distract himself from the emptiness he felt, but nothing filled the void that Sarah had left. His friends, realizing the depth of his pain, tried to reach out, but he kept them at arm's length, unable to forgive them or himself for what had happened. Despite everything, Leo couldn't let go of Sarah. He started volunteering at a local shelter she had once mentioned wanting to support, hoping to keep a part of her close. He began to understand what it meant to truly care for others and to live without expecting anything in return. Slowly, he learned to be kinder not only to others but also to himself. As he grew, Leo realized that his love for Sarah had changed him. He wanted to be a better man, not to win her back, but because she had taught him what it meant to love selflessly. Months turned into a year, and Leo continued to live a quieter, more purposeful life. He heard through mutual friends that Sarah was doing well, and he was genuinely happy for her. She had expanded her bakery, opening a second location, and was thriving. It hurt to know that she had moved on, but he accepted it as part of his growth. Then one day, as he was leaving the shelter, he saw her across the street. She was walking with a friend, laughing, and looked happier than he had ever seen her. For a moment, their eyes met, and Leo felt his heart skip a beat. He gave her a small smile, and to his surprise, she nodded politely before turning away. That simple acknowledgement felt like closure, a small yet powerful gesture that allowed him to finally let go of the past. He knew that he had done everything he could to redeem himself, and though he had lost her, he had found a new version of himself, a better, truer version. Months later, Leo received an invitation to a charity event hosted by the shelter. When he arrived, he was surprised to see Sarah there, talking to a group of people. She looked radiant, her passion for helping others shining through. He didn't approach her, content to watch from a distance. As the evening progressed, they eventually found themselves alone at the refreshment table. Sarah turned to him, her expression soft. "Leo," she greeted him, her voice gentle. "Sarah," he replied, feeling a mixture of emotions swell within him. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," she replied, pausing thoughtfully. "I heard about the work you've been doing here. It's inspiring." Leo shrugged, smiling humbly. "I wanted to do something meaningful. Something you'd be proud of." She looked at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "I am proud of you, Leo. I can see that you've changed." His heart swelled at her words, but he kept his composure. "Thank you, Sarah. That means everything to me." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the tension between them easing. Then Sarah spoke again. "Maybe we could grab a coffee sometime. As friends." Leo's eyes met hers, and he nodded, grateful for the second chance, however small it might be. "I'd like that," he replied softly. As they walked out of the event together, Leo felt a renewed sense of hope. He knew he had a long road ahead of him, but he was willing to take it slowly, letting things unfold naturally. For the first time in his life, he was content with simply being by her side, knowing that whatever happened next, he had learned what it meant to truly love. Leo and Sarah began meeting for coffee on quiet Saturday mornings, and their conversations grew warmer and more familiar with each passing week. They talked about life, work, and the little things that mattered to them. Leo felt grateful for each moment they shared, content to be in her presence again, even if only as friends. Sarah had rebuilt her walls carefully, letting Leo in slowly and cautiously. She saw the changes in him, the genuine kindness, the humility, and the selflessness he had gained through his volunteer work. He had grown in ways she hadn't expected, but she was careful not to rush her feelings. Trust, she knew, would take time. One evening, Sarah invited Leo to a community dinner at her bakery, where she had gathered friends, family, and loyal customers to celebrate another milestone. As they shared stories and laughter with others, Leo found himself watching Sarah from across the room, captivated by her joy and warmth. She was radiant, full of life, and entirely at ease, reminding him of all the reasons he had fallen for her. Later that night, after the guests had left and they were tidying up, Leo hesitated before speaking. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft but earnest. "Thank you for letting me be here tonight. It meant a lot to me." Sarah looked at him with a gentle smile. "Thank you for coming. I wanted you to see this side of my life. This place has been my dream for as long as I can remember." "I'm so proud of you," he said sincerely. "You've built something beautiful here." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Leo, I see that you've changed. And I'm glad you're part of my life again, even if it's just as friends." Leo nodded, accepting her words with humility. "I'll always be here, however you need me to be." For weeks, they continued spending time together, building a friendship that was honest and true. Their connection grew deeper, shaped by the understanding they shared and the trust they were slowly rebuilding. One weekend, as they sat in the park sharing stories, Sarah looked at Leo, her gaze steady. "There's something I've been wanting to tell you," she said, her tone serious. Leo tensed, fearing she might tell him she was seeing someone new or that she didn't want him in her life anymore. But instead she surprised him. "I never stopped caring about you, Leo," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It's been hard to forgive. But I think I'm ready to try." Leo's heart pounded, a mixture of relief and joy washing over him. "Sarah," he began, his voice trembling. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I promise I'll spend every day proving myself worthy of it. I want us to have a future, one that's built on trust, not lies." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek as she smiled. Then let's take it one day at a time. As the months passed, Leo and Sarah grew closer, their relationship blossoming into something deeper and more profound. Leo kept his promise, staying true to her and proving his love through small, thoughtful actions. He distanced himself from his old friends, recognizing that their influence had brought out the worst in him. His focus shifted entirely to his relationship with Sarah and the life they were building together. Eventually, Leo and Sarah decided to renew their vows in a simple, private ceremony. Unlike their first wedding, which had been extravagant and showy, this one was intimate, with only their closest friends and family in attendance. It was a celebration of second chances, filled with heartfelt promises and sincere love. Leo's parents, who had grown fond of Sarah, were there to support them, beaming with pride as they watched the couple exchange vows. They knew how much Sarah had helped Leo become a better man, and they were grateful for her presence in his life. When it was Leo's turn to speak, he took her hands and looked deeply into her eyes. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "you taught me what it means to love, to be humble, and to cherish the people around me. I promise to honor, respect, and love you for all the days of my life. Thank you for giving me a second chance." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she replied, "Leo, you've shown me that love can heal even the deepest wounds. I'm grateful for the man you've become, and I'm proud to call you my husband. I promise to stand by you and to love you no matter what." As they exchanged rings and shared their first kiss as husband and wife once again, their friends and family cheered, celebrating the love that had been tested but endured. Life after the ceremony was peaceful and fulfilling. Sarah's bakery flourished, and Leo continued his volunteer work, finding a sense of purpose that had once eluded him. They grew stronger as a couple, supporting each other's dreams and sharing a bond that was unbreakable. One sunny afternoon, Sarah surprised Leo with news that filled his heart with joy. They were expecting a child. The journey that had started as a bet, fueled by shallow motives, had transformed into something beautiful, something real. Leo knew he was blessed to have found true love, and he vowed to cherish it forever. As they prepared to welcome their child into the world, Leo and Sarah looked forward to a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. They had learned that even the deepest wounds could heal and that true love was worth fighting for. Together, they had built a life of honesty and compassion, a life they would protect and nurture, forever grateful for the second chance they had been given. We have come to the end of this story. Do not forget to subscribe for more amazing stories, comment and share this videos to your loved ones. Till we meet again, lovelies.